Okay, this is section two, basically the second part of Chelik Aleph of Orot HaKodesh. So Orot HaKodesh is again divided into four books. The first book is Chelik Aleph, and it has a bunch of different sections. So this is section two, and in section two, so it's continuing with the same number system. So now it's chapter 14. Parak Yud is the section. It's called Tvi'at Ha'ichud Haruchani. So this is really talking about Tvi'at ha'ichud means basically the demand or like the claim towards ichud means oneness or integration. And so and ichud haruchani is kind of referring to the integration of all the more intangible sides of our experience of ourselves and life. And this piece is really about how we yearn for and constantly are trying to figure out how to integrate different parts of ourselves. And when you sort of think about that in a very normal way without trying to use, complex language, it really just means trying to make sense of yourself. And making sense of yourself really kind of also, even you could break it into two parts. There's making sense of yourself to sort of like figuring out how different parts of yourself are really connected to each other. Like if you get angry at certain kinds of people, or let's say you, whether you're, depending on your age situation, if you're in school still and maybe you're the type of person who's more loud or rebellious or assertive or disruptive, or if you're the type of person who is, or let's say you're at work and you're the type of person who is very, you constantly lower yourself in other people's faces, or always giving in very easily. There's different kinds of nature expressions, how we kind of express ourselves, and these things are all connected to each other, and the different ways that you manifest your character in different situations, there's underlying themes, and those themes have even a more meta theme underlying them until you eventually get to like a core structure of like how you're designed on the inside, and like those core aspects are really what drive a lot of the things that we see on the outside. So that's what Ichud Haruchani means. It's basically the integration of the intangibles into like kind of like a oneness or a unity, or kind of figuring how they all kind of fit together into one whole. And the other aspect, the subcategory, we said there's two. There's like, there's the making things kind of fit together, that they become kind of integrated into one. But another part of it is where things, not just where things are fragmented, but also where like you wrongly fit things together. Like when you put things together inside of yourself in a way that does not fit, that causes a lot of problems, where you basically misapply ideas or principles, and you kind of misdiagnose yourself. So that's if you say something about yourself like, I teach high school students right now, so a lot of times they'll tell me that they have ADD, or that they're not good at this or at that, or that they're terrible at thinking. And this is like what's happening there is that it's not just that they're failing to integrate different parts of their character, it's that they have a certain idea about the way that their character is operating, about a piece of their character. So let's take an example, somebody who tends to think in a very, we'll call it like a multi-directional type of way. That's like a nice word for what people today call ADD. So they'll say, well, I have ADD, so like I can't think easily, I can't pay attention, like I can't learn so well, and so they give themselves like a lot of outs of like there's something wrong with me, so I have this problem now. I'm not saying that it's easy to be that way, but what I am saying is that every weakness is also a strength, and when you start to fixate on a particular dynamic within yourself in a way that's disempowering of yourself, that's going to cause you pain, because what you're doing is you're basically you're negating part of yourself, and you're also not able to live to your fullest strength, because there are things you could do with that kind of a skill. People who think in an ADD type of way actually have an incredible power, because thinking, generally speaking, is usually not meant to be, and or able to even be linear. And if you think in many directions at once, even though you might say, wow, it's a little messy in my head, and that's probably somewhat true, but like that kind of messiness is what leads to all kinds of creativity and unusual ideas and very broad encounters with an idea over here, an idea over there, and suddenly we can do things with them. So it's really a power. But when you misapply the idea of like multi-directional thinking, and you start saying I have ADD, so now you're putting that dynamic or aspect of your character in the wrong place, and now it's not going to fit in well with everything else. And not only is it not one, it's also like contradicting and causing pain because of that. So that's really what this piece is talking about. One last piece thought before we actually read the piece is also that Rav Kook here is really writing about Bnei Yisrael, but this is really applicable to, when we talk about Bnei Yisrael nowadays, it's an interesting thing because Bnei Yisrael really refers to a type of neshama way of being, like a certain way that the intangible self manifests through the tangible tools. And there's lots of people who are not officially part of Bnei Israel who have this same set of tools because they are, again, it's a way of being. And there are plenty of people who are actually part of Bnei Israel today, which, and this is a little bit of a controversial thing to say, but people who are part of Bnei Israel officially, and yet they do not operate in this way. And they have a lot of blockages and developmental coverings that get in the way of their really experiencing what this is talking about here. And so it just sort of shows you that the labels don't really do very much justice to the realities on the ground, and this applies to lots of people in different ways as opposed to just being something which is about Bnei Israel. But he here is referring to the people of, the Israel people, and that's really just an important context to think about here. So he writes, we are constantly called to, it is demanded of us to unify and to kind of fit together in the proper place all of our thoughts. Yisurim anu margishim, we feel like Yisurim means things which shove us. Yisurim means something which presses against you and makes you move. So usually translated as things like suffering, because suffering is a type of Yisurim. It's something which, when you get hit with something which is difficult, so it shoves you in a certain direction. You feel pain, so it tells you, it's a signal, don't go this way, go that way. So that's what Yisurim actually means. It means from the word lasur, which means to veer or to deviate your path. So Yisurim means things which cause you to move in a different direction. So we experience Yisurim meheder ha'itachdut, from the lack of the unification of ourselves. In other words, when you basically are fragmented, it causes you to now be drawn in different directions. I feel like I'm trying to make sense of things. So maybe over here I'll find something, or maybe over there I'll find something that'll help me make sense. This is the philosophy that I need, or this is the class I need, or this is what I need to do. And there's all these attempts to clarify because you feel like you're all over the place. Something here just doesn't fit right. It's not right. It's not the way it's supposed to be. And that's the dynamic of Yisur, which pulls you in different directions as a result. But there's a lot more pain from the not fittingness. In other words, when things don't fit and they conflict, like we said before, that causes a lot of pain, as the examples that we said in the introduction. And as long as we, and to the extent that we lift ourselves up towards, agreeing with or in alignment with the drive, to put together, to fit together in the proper way, and to then unify the different limbs of our intangible self, which really means all the different aspects of your character that are intangible, not just actual physical limbs, but the different different emotional aspects and different parts of your thought. And so as long as you decide to get yourself in alignment with the process of integration and getting yourself to fit together again, that then causes, the more you get yourself into that, the more kind of causes that to snowball, where you get better and better and better at it. It's when you fit together two or three things and they work well, then it's oh, that works well, so now it's going to work even more at working well. It's like when you succeed in a particular class in school or something, and it's so once you have that success, now it kind of drives more success. Success begets more success, because you kind of have this trend now of oh, I'm good at this, I'm good at that. It empowers you to be more capable because of that. That's really what we're saying here, is that the power, the kochos halyona means the higher way of being kind of now has more space inside of you to direct you in a more unifying type of way. When you do that, when you have those powers kind of flowing into you more, so that really makes it even more unified now and really fits you together even better. You get deeper clarity, more understanding, which is why as soon as you get onto this track, it's just really powerful, because you really start to make real progress in terms of getting better at being you. And I think a lot of times we struggle, the classic New Year resolution problem, where you decide this year I'm gonna be less shy and more outgoing, and then you try, you have this excitement of being a little different, and then it lasts for about, I don't know, a week, month and a half, 2 months before you slowly realize you know what, I'm kind of the same, I'm not changing, it's not working. And then you oscillate this way, that way, and then at the end of the year, you're again another New Year's resolution. This year I'm really gonna do it. And the underlying problem there is that your character is more complex than just, I don't like some part of myself, so I'm just going to say that I'm going to not be that way anymore. You have to understand the different parts of the character. Why are you not so assertive? Why are you more shy and not so outgoing? When you understand the different parts of what caused you to be that way inside of yourself, and instead you move them around and reorganize them so that they're in the proper way, So then where you can be balanced and know when to speak up and when not to speak up and how to think about these things in a clear way. So that's really what, kind of gets you rolling. And instead of being in the situation where like for 20, I remember just my own life, like there were a bunch of like many years where there were certain problems that like I just never got past them. And I was like, and then I remember even reading an article once where someone wrote, this is just how things work. Like, life's about like, it's like one step forward, two steps back. You could end up having the same problem for 50 years. And I was like, that's true. I think that is true, but like, that's kind of a little bit fatalistic. Like, it definitely could turn out that you have the same problem for 50 years. But I think it's also very important to try to see if you can figure out more effective methods of actually evolving to get past problems, at least in their current form, before you get to another version of the problem, let's say. So here, that's what we're saying is that it can, when you figure out how to put stuff together inside yourself properly, it can lead to a snowball effect where everything starts, you get better and better and better at being you, and better and better and better at being you in life, as opposed to kind of just being stuck on the same cyclical patterns again and again, the same lows, and then trying to get up again, and then another low, and whatever. Yoser mikol am v'lashon, more than any other group of people and any other nationality in the world, eina nachnu yecholom lisbos hastira. We are not able to tolerate contradictions. So this is kind of like how we sometimes describe the Jewish people as being people that do not tolerate contradictions. That's the people, talking about people of the book, people who always ask questions, people who are constantly finding problems, learning. They can't really don't sit still so well, always trying to change the world. And again, this is not really unique to the Jewish people, although we definitely have a high percentage and proportion of people with this way, and that's has interesting significance on its own. But the point is that it's not only people who are part of Bnei Israel, the Jewish people. But what he's saying here is that these people, we have a very hard time with contradictions, and that's really what is reflected in this whole people of the book, or the learning and the asking questions, is because we are constantly trying to make sense. The we of us who are doing this are constantly trying to make sense of ourselves and of the world around us. And that's really what this is saying, is that when you can't tolerate contradictions, what it really means is you do not tolerate things that don't click together. The world has to fit. As Einstein was famous for saying that, God doesn't play dice with the universe. Like, things have to make sense. And even in the scientific community, there's so much of that thought structure, which is that, we assume that the universe is actually understandable, that it's comprehensible, that these are things that we can actually put together and fit in our minds in some kind of integrated, coherent structure. So we do not tolerate contradiction. And also, and similarly, the disintegrated self is similarly not tolerated. Skulas olam hivanu. This is like our defining characteristic. It's a immortal characteristic. Hashalom va'ichud. Shalom here usually translated as peace for some reason, but the word shalom from the word shalem, which really means to be whole. And something which is whole has a lot of parts that all fit together and are in harmony. So shalom really means harmony. Hashalom va'ichud, the harmony and the unification. B'tzurasam ideali, that's really like in their ideal, like in the ideal state, is to have that harmony and oneness and unity. That's really what we're looking for. Our disintegrated state, the Jewish people have been all over the world, all over the place for thousands of years. We were kicked out of our own country 2,000 years ago, and then we've been coming back over time, more and more and more, as we now get ready for the next phase of reality, which is Olam Haba phase, the immortal life that after we heal these biological bodies and get them to stop operating in such a dysfunctional way. So now our scattering around the world for so many for thousands of years is only a temporary state. We're in the future, we're going to become one again, to be one group inside of the land, which means the land of Israel, which is our land. So basically, he's saying that's our whole nature, is like a trend towards oneness and a trend towards integration in that way. That's really what our people is kind of about. And more than anyone else, the characterization of our people is to struggle to make sense of things. There's a lot more to talk about that in terms of how Jewish people, how we tend to do things, and how the community really operates. And in certain ways, you might find that it's not like this. And there's a lot to say about how the culture of the Jewish people today is interestingly diverging in certain aspects from this approach of just seeking to make sense of something in a really truth-oriented way. But underneath, this is still the same. It is still that people are looking for truth, just that there's a lot of cultural baggage that gets in the way of real truth-seeking when there's all kinds of cultural trends of how to do that are not always actually looking for truth, but are more about just fitting in a certain way and being part of the community. That's a much longer discussion. That's basically what this piece is saying. And see you in the next video for Perek Tet Vav.